Lord of Mysteries. Fire of Destruction Chapter 21 to 30. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Seeing the huge Roman Colosseum surrounded by fire, Adrian widened his eyes in shock. One would think he was back in the time when the Colosseum was packed with spectators eager to see the gladiators slaughter and kill each other for the satisfaction of the spectators. The Colosseum seemed to be in all its glory, as if it was still hosting gladiators and beasts to satisfy the public's bloodlust. But there was a problem. The Colosseum seemed to be shaking continuously, as if something was there and it was trying with all its might to escape, but the Colosseum wouldn't allow it. Realizing the danger Adrian was in, he quickly tried to look away as he tried to get out of the city of calamities. And he turned his gaze just in time, because blood began to fall from all the orifices of his face while his hair grew longer and his pupils elongated like those of a panther. The muscles in his legs and arms tore, while his fingernails slowly grew to resemble claws. Raving began to ring in his head and Adrian fell to his knees holding his head. Adrian felt his lungs on fire and he couldn't breathe, his throat was clogged and his mind clouded. The Colosseum began to shake more strongly and the fire that surrounded it grew bigger, completely covering the Colosseum and preventing it from shaking more. The city of calamities began to shake strongly, holding whatever was in the Colosseum in place. Adrian didn't even have time to cry out in pain as one of the fire soldiers appeared next to him and carried him in his arms as he ran quickly away from the Colosseum. Despite being made of fire, it did not hurt Adrian. The more they got away from the Colosseum, Adrian's condition improved, his red hair returned to normal length while his pupils returned to those of a human being. But he was still not safe, as he could still hear the ravings of something. The fire soldier who was carrying it quickly returned to the entrance of the city and carefully placed it on the ground. Giving a military salute, the fire soldier returned to his position as if nothing had happened. "You deserve a raise," Adrian murmured weakly. He had run out of strength and his body was still trembling from the pain and the experience he had. If he kept looking at the Colosseum without giving importance to its strangeness of it, he would have died. After the city of calamities stopped shaking, it finally began to treat Adrian's wounds with the yellowish smoke, causing the ravings to gradually leave his mind and his arms and legs to heal while his fingernails returned to their original length. When the wounds were healed, Adrian left the city of calamities and returned to his body. Feeling his chest wet, Adrian looked down to see that his chest was covered in blood. Looking in the mirror, Adrian could see the blood from his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Not even having the strength to get up and go to clean himself, Adrian's eyes rolled back and he fainted on the floor. While all this was happening, a boy was playing cards in his room. He looked dignified and strong, in his early teens. The boy was about 1.4 meters tall and he had pitch black eyes. Suddenly the boy turned his head so fast you'd think he broke his neck and looked in a specific direction. The boy said nothing and stared in that direction for a while. Not achieving anything, the boy grabbed the deck of cards he had and shuffled it quickly. Pulling out a random card, he looked at it. The Chariot. The boy said no more and stared at the card. In a space completely covered in darkness except for a small square of light. In this was a tall and thin man with long, silver hair reaching his back and soft facial features. He was praying with his eyes closed to a one-eyed giant hanging upside down on a cross. Suddenly the man stopped praying and turned to look in a specific direction for a long time. At 10 a.m. on Friday, June 9th, Adrian was still lying on the ground covered in blood. After half an hour, Adrian got up suddenly and while colliding with everything in his house, he went to the bathroom. Arriving at the WC, Adrian began to vomit his dinner from yesterday along with a little blood. After emptying his stomach, Adrian collapsed next to the WC and stared at the ceiling with his reddish-brown eyes as he gasped for air. He stayed like that for another half hour. Finally, Adrian shakily got up from the floor and weakly removed his blood-stained clothing, and tossed it aside as he slowly stepped into the shower. A hot shower would have done Adrian very well at that moment, but the only ones that could afford that were the nobles, so he had to beat himself with cold water. After 20 minutes, Adrian was in front of his fireplace while burning his bloody clothes. Adrian was quite pale and his gaze was a bit weak. I won't go near that damn Colosseum again until at least I'm an angel, was all he thought as he watched his clothes burn. At 12:30 p.m., Adrian finally arrived at the club. When Robert saw him, he quickly put away his book and walked over to him with an alarmed look. Mr. Adrian, what happened to you? Are you okay? Do you need a glass of water? A chair to sit on? Some medicine? Seeing how alarmed Robert was, Adrian just shook his head at Robert's attitude, but his concern warmed his tired body. I'm fine, Mr. Robert the First, just need a good rest tonight and I'll feel like new in the morning. And a lot of food, my stomach is completely empty, was what Adrian said in his mind. This calmed Robert down a bit, but he still gave her a worried look. Then I hope to see you better tomorrow, Mr. Adrian. Yes, I know, and if I don't, I'll go see a doctor. Hearing this, Robert completely calmed down and went back to reading his book. Heading to the shooting range again, he saw Grievous writing something in a little book. When he saw Adrian's appearance, he couldn't help but let out one insult. Shit boy, it looks like your woman left you dry. Is she a vampire? You're pale as dead. With a sigh, Adrian simply walked over and he sat next to the bald man to rest for a while. Settling back in the chair, Adrian turned to face Grievous. I'm sorry, Mr. Grievous, but today I won't be able to take your classes today. This made Grievous raise an eyebrow as he took a drag on his cigarette. If you couldn't take classes today, there was no need for you to come and tell me. You could miss it and I wouldn't mind. I could be smoking without having to watch your ass. This made Adrian chuckle slightly at the insult. Excuse me about that, Mr. Grievous, but I couldn't leave an old man alone all by himself. When he said this, the two looked at each other and then laughed. You know, Brad, you are the only one in the club who is capable of putting up with me, so congratulations, you are the least imbecile in this club. Maybe if you stopped provoking everyone you come across, you'd be nicer to be around. Said with a quivering eyebrow, and they were in silence for a while before Grievous spoke with a serious tone. Tell me, Brad, have you been noticing something curious around Backland lately? At the change in tone, Adrian's expression became serene and he saw that Grievous had become serious. If you mean all the murders and deaths due to illness, yes, I have noticed. It seems that you are not pure muscle, Brat. With his eyebrow twitching again, Adrian added more. It seems that something very dark is happening in Backland. You've hit the nail on the nose. Taking a puff on his cigarette, he looked at the roof of the shooting range while he added something else. I feel like something big is coming and I don't think anyone is ready for it, Grievous said it with depth and uncertainty. You have no idea how right you are, Mr. Grievous. Thought Adrian. Looking at Grievous, the redhead decided to change the subject before they got too dark. Mr. Grievous, do you have a job other than teaching at the shooting range? Adrian had this curiosity because Grievous was always at the shooting range and he wanted to remove this doubt for a while. When he had said this, Grievous was taken aback by the question before giving a huge smile. Hey, I work in the Church God of Knowledge and Wisdom. You didn't expect that, did you? While saying this, he took out a book from his bag, showing that it was the Holy Bible of the Church. This caused Adrian's eyes to widen in shock as he looked at Grievous as if he had grown another head. He quickly moved away from Grievous as he took out his revolver and pointed it at him. Don't be so nervous, Brat, it's not necessary to get to that point. But Grievous was just as calm as he continued to smoke. But this didn't calm Adrian and he kept the revolver on Grievous the whole time. Are you a church Beander? And you keep showing that you're not just muscle. Listen to me, Brat, put down the gun, and let's talk like civilized people. After all, I never arrested you, right? Thinking for a moment, Adrian kept the revolver in its holster but did not approach Grievous. He just stared at him very while he was close to the stairs to escape. Much better. Look, Brat. Wouldn't you like a job opportunity without having to worry about being arrested? Grievous took out his cigarette and looked at Adrian. Are you asking me to join the church? But I am an illegal Beander. Please do not compare us with the other churches. We of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom do not judge illegals as long as they have not done anything serious, and we even usually give them the opportunity to join us as long as they pass the inspections, and you, Adrian, have been approved and have the opportunity to join our church. When he finished saying this, Grievous took out another cigarette and lit it. All this information was tearing Adrian's head to shreds. He thought that he managed to stay away from the church's radar, but it turns out that he was in the eyes of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom all this time. Adrian thought for a long time and gritting his teeth, he realized that he was in checkmate. He was too stupid to think that he would be able to move under the noses of the churches as he grew stronger, but it turns out that he was in the palm of one all this time. He had been too arrogant and careless, which led to this situation. At least I was lucky that it was the church of that dragon that ended up discovering me, since if it was any other I would already be dead or in a cell being experimented on. Giving a big sigh, the redhead just nodded at Grievous, which made him have a huge smile, and took the cigarette out of his mouth. Welcome to the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom, Adrian Kenway. When he finished saying that, he put the cigarette back in his mouth. Then he moved to Adrian's side and patted his shoulder. Tomorrow I will take you to a good teacher from the church so that you can learn from him, since I doubt you have much mystical knowledge. Giving him one last pat on the shoulder, Grievous left the firing range, leaving only Adrian, who stared at the ground for a while. Adrian could only sigh and headed home. While Adrian was in the public carriage on his way home, just 40 minutes after he left the area, a little boy appeared and started looking around. Not finding what he was looking for, he frowned. Fate is too weird in here. The boy then disappeared in the blink of an eye. After another while, a man with long white hair appeared in the sky and looked around but couldn't find anything. This one, too, had already disappeared in the blink of an eye, never realizing how close he came to catching a certain snake and how the boy almost was caught without realizing it. Adrian would never have known that he had almost put an end to the game of hide and seek that had been played for millennia. When he got home after checking the traps, the redhead made his snack and sat at the table. He simply stared at his food plate for a long time before eating. The food had gotten cold. On Saturday morning, Adrian woke up and went to the club to meet with Grievous. Upon entering the club, Adrian saw, as always, Robert reading. How many times have you read that book? But thinking better that maybe Robert was saving money for something, Adrian didn't give it much importance and went to the shooting range. Downstairs, Adrian could see Grievous sitting while reading the Bible of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom. And now that you no longer have to hide it, you read it in front of me, you are a good provoker, thought the redhead. When Grievous saw him, he smiled, put the Bible away. Getting up from the chair, he went to him and patted his shoulder. Good morning, brat, I hope you are ready for your classes. Saying that, he gave him one last strong pat on the shoulder and went up the stairs. Looking at Grievous's back, the redhead could only sigh and follow the reflective head of the man. They got into a carriage and marched towards their destination. Preferring to talk to Grievous than to have an awkward silence, Adrian decided to ask him a few things. And then, Mr. Grievous, what is my teacher like? At this, Grievous smiled. He is a very intelligent and knowledgeable man and has great deduction and reasoning abilities. He will also be able to fill that empty head of yours. After saying that, Grievous laughed. With his eyebrow trembling, the redhead kept quiet and looked out the window for what was left of the trip. After a while, they arrived at Hillston Borough in front of a house, which caused Adrian to be unable to help but take a look around and then returned his gaze to the house. This has to be a joke. Of all people, it turned out to be him. Grievous approached the door of the house and knocked on it. After a while, a servant opened it a little to see who had arrived. He was a bit suspicious at first, but after seeing Grievous, he opened the door completely. Mr. Grievous, please come in. Master Stanton is waiting for you. Nodding to the servant, Grievous walked in unhurriedly while the redhead followed behind while greeting the servant. Arriving at the room, one could see a middle-aged gentleman with white sideburns, a thin face, and an outstanding temperament. He has blue eyes. Seeing Grievous, he got up from his chair and approached them. Grievous, my good friend, it's a pleasure to have you visit, and this should be the boy I have to teach, right? He greeted as he analyzed the redhead with his gaze. A pleasure to see you too, Isengard, and yes, it is this brat. Yep, it's the detective, Adrian thought as he watched all this. Brat, let me introduce you to a good friend of mine and a renowned detective. He is Isengard Stanton and he will be your professor of mysticism until you learn enough or your brain explodes, whichever happens first. Ignoring Grievous's insult, the redhead bowed and introduced himself. It's a pleasure to meet you, Detective Isengard. It will be an honor for me to be your student. Nodding at Adrian, Grievous simply headed for the exit and turned around before leaving. Well, I'll leave the two of you to get to know each other better. I have things to do. I hope you learn something, brat. saying that Grievous left, leaving the detective and the redhead alone. They simply looked at each other for a while and neither of them spoke, but then Isengard smiled. Nice to meet you, Mr. Hunter. Not expecting this greeting, Adrian was surprised for a moment. So that's how you want to play detective? Adrian thought before letting out a sharp smile. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Eye of Wisdom. Adrian didn't even try to deny his identity or try to find out how he was discovered. In the face of a detective, Beander of Sequence 7, such disguises are easy to see through. Not expecting that reaction or response, Isengard widened his eyes slightly but quickly regained his composure. You have excellent observation skills to be able to figure out who I was just by seeing me once. Classes might not cost you as much as I originally thought. Was that an insult or a compliment? Thought the redhead. Tell me, my student, how is your knowledge in mysticism and how many languages do you speak? This question caused Adrian to blush a little. If one thinks, his knowledge in mysticism could be the most advanced on the entire planet, for all the knowledge he had in hidden history, the secrets of this world, and even the secret plans of the gods, his knowledge is only below the gods. But his basics are almost nothing. If he tried to give an example, it would be: a great building began to be built from the roof down, and the more one goes down, the more pieces are missing. The most important element to be inside the world of mysticism was knowing how to speak ancient languages. And he didn't speak any of them. I doubt that Portuguese, English, or Spanish are what he refers to. With a bit of embarrassment, Adrian replied. My bases are decent, Professor Isengard, but I don't know how to speak Hermes, Dragon, Elvish nor Jotun. This caused Isengard to stare at Adrian for a while, causing him to blush more. Wait here, I'll go pick up the books so we can start studying. But before he left, the redhead stopped him. Wait, Professor Isengard, I need to ask you one thing. This caused the detective to look at him with a raised eyebrow. If it is within my capabilities, I can do it. What do you need, my student? This caused a weight to be lifted from Adrian's shoulders now that he didn't have to wait for the next party. I would like you to check a formula for me. Obviously, I am going to pay you for it. This was the main reason why Adrian had never collected the ingredients to already ascend to sequence 8, since he did not trust Grievous and wanted to check the formula at the Eye of Wisdom party. Of course, much of his mistrust vanished when Grievous recruited him to join the church, but Adrian wanted to make sure first. Hearing the request, Isengard could only sigh and give the price of £20 for confirmation. After that, he returned with 4 thick books in the same silver container. You already know the method. Put the note with the formula on the table. Adrian quickly placed the note on the table, and Isengard took out the same ring and placed it on her left hand, quickly placing his hand on the note. Valid, was all he said before quickly putting the ring back in the container. Handing over the £20 to Isengard, Adrian pocketed the formula with a light heart. Now he could start looking for the ingredients at Mr. A's party next Friday. But first, he turned to see the 4 thick books that were on the table. The first thing you will do is learn the language of Hermes, then you will learn ancient Hermes. After mastering this language, you will learn Elvish, Dragon, and Jotun. Adrian already knew that he had to know how to speak these languages if he wanted to survive, so he simply grabbed the first book from the stack and began to pay attention to what Isengard was saying. Ancient Hermes is an extraordinary language created by Hermes during the Second Epoch, based on Jotun and Dragonese. The effect of this language is direct and effective. The ancient Hermes language can be used for unprotected sacrifices and prayers. The guide word can be used at the beginning of the ceremony. During the Fourth Epoch, ancient Hermes was simplified, making it easier to use, teach, and spread for everyday use. However, it no longer had such a strong and direct effect on rituals. The contemporary Hermes is improved. Adrian was learning from Isengard from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I will give you classes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays starting at 10 o'clock and finishing at 1500. I want you to learn the complete alphabet of Hermes in the time you have free and be able to understand 10 complete sentences. When he said that, Isengard marked the end of the class and invited him to have tea before he left. Adrian accepted as there was still time to kill before his assignment as cargo escort. While Adrian was having tea with Isengard, he took the opportunity to ask various questions about languages and for advice when studying Hermes. Isengard was happy to answer Adrian's questions and doubts. The detective noticed the effort that the redhead put in to learn the language as quickly as possible and was not ashamed to ask for help when he needed it. These were good qualities in a student that made it easier for him to teach. Finishing the tea, Adrian said goodbye to his teacher and went home to prepare for the escort assignment. When he got home, the first thing Adrian did was check that his equipment was ready, and he checked that the state of his revolver was as correct as possible. After checking everything 5 times, Adrian was ready for the mission. But before leaving, Adrian thought of something. If I become famous through these errands, I'll end up getting discovered by the witches faster, and I'm still not strong enough to face them. With his mind made up, Adrian quickly went back to his room and grabbed the mask and cloak he used to attend Mr. Detective's party. After making a few minor modifications to make it look like a different mask, Adrian was ready to go. He had a feeling that things could get complicated. Arriving at the meeting point, Adrian saw that there were already 6 other people in the place. 2 of them, like him, were hiding their identity while the other 4 were not. Those who hid their identity seemed to be together and were separated from the others. Those who did not hide their identity seemed to be in a large group and all had a red band on their right arm. They seemed to be part of some kind of gang, thought the masked Adrian as he looked at this group out of the corner of his eye. These 4 people were well armed and could be seen by the revolvers and knives that each one had. But these were not Adrian's concerns but the 2 tight people. The gang members had normal auras. But those 2 people were beyonders, I could tell by the aura they emanated. One of them was very tall, perhaps about 1.95 meters, and by body and odor appeared to be a woman, while the other appeared to be a 1.70 meters male who was constantly talking in a low voice with a pendulum dangling from his left hand. Thanks to his keen hunter senses, Adrian could hear what the man was saying and he didn't like it at all. This job is dangerous. This job is dangerous. This job is dangerous. After repeating this 7 times in a low voice, Adrian managed to see that the pendulum began to move clockwise but at a low speed. Dangerous, but if you're careful it's controllable. After interpreting that, Adrian's pupils shrunk and he became even more alert than before. But after that, he heard how the man used divination again. Way to avoid danger. Way to avoid danger. After repeating that 7 times, Adrian returned his gaze to the pair and saw how they returned his gaze. The pendulum was pointing at him. Before he could do anything, one last person arrived, and this one had a cold aura that made Adrian curse in his head. This was a young woman with black hair and mischievous eyes. She was not hiding her identity, which allowed one to see her beautiful face, but was spoiled by those mischievous eyes. Why do I have to meet so many prisoners? My luck is so bad. Before Adrian could continue cursing in his head, a short fat man also arrived and he was surrounded by 4 strong and armed men. So you are the ones who took the order? Well, I don't care who you are or your names, so save yourself the introductions. Your job is to protect me until I reach the port where I will take my ship. After completing all that, one of my men will give you the reward, so get going. In the end, the package to escort is this chubby insult in his heart Adrian. But Adrian didn't immediately follow the fat guy but rather waited for the gang to advance first, then the prisoner woman followed, and the last ones left were him and the group of 2. They stared at each other for a few moments before the giant woman stepped forward towards Adrian. Good evening, sir. Seeing that we are at a numerical disadvantage, wouldn't you like to make an alliance with us for the duration of this assignment? The man who stayed behind was swearing under his breath, and Adrian was sure of it because he could hear it. As he continued to stare at the giant woman in silence, causing her to move her hands slowly behind her back. Giving a smile behind his mask, the redhead replied, I'm Mr. Chaplin, I hope we can cover each other's backs. Saying that, Adrian extended his fist toward the woman. This made the woman smile hugely and she bumped fists with him. This also greatly relaxed the man behind and he quickly came towards them. I'm Sasha and this dwarf is Nathan. We're counting on you, Mr. Chaplin. The meeting place for the escort was located 40 minutes from the place where the fat man was going to take his boat. This brought several doubts to the redhead. Why did he need so many people to escort him? Why did it have to be in the middle of the night? What was he so afraid of that he didn't dare to slip away? Despite being so far apart, Adrian could see how the fat man was looking everywhere as if he were a deer trying to see the wolf. The guy had one hand inside his jacket like he was holding something. Most likely it's a revolver, but you never know. It had barely been 5 minutes since they left and they moved too carefully. The fatty undoubtedly messed with the wrong person and now he was trying to escape. Looking around, Adrian could see that the gang that had the red bands was quite calm, as if they didn't care about the fat man's behavior. But they never took their eyes off the fat man's back. What a surprise, they take it seriously, Adrian insulted as he moved his gaze to the woman who was alone. This girl gave him the chills because she was humming a little melody in a low voice, but because of the sharp senses of the potion Adrian could hear her. 13 children were walking through the forest. Getting lost in the forest, they did not see how the wolves were getting closer. Crazy bitch. Keeping a greater distance from the woman, Adrian looked at his temporary companions. Sasha was looking around, keeping alert for any possible attack, while Nathan had one hand on his revolver ready to pull it out at any moment. I was not mistaken in accepting that offer, Adrian thought calmly as they kept moving through the dark streets, gradually approaching their destination. After 10 minutes without encountering a problem, Sasha gradually lowered her guard while Nathan still kept his hand on his revolver but was not attentive enough to pull it out quickly. Even the fat man seemed to be calming down and took his hand out of his coat. This period of calm affected everyone unconsciously, and even Sasha tried to start a conversation with Adrian. And tell me, Mr. Chaplin, what motivated you to take on this escort assignment? Seeing no harm in responding, Adrian spoke. In order to take on more orders, I need to have a better reputation in the bar, and this order was recommended to me. What about you? We need the money to be able to do some things here in Backland, so we decided to start with this. Nodding at Sasha's words, Adrian simply decided to continue the conversation while he still had his guard up. So I wish you the best to achieve what you are looking for. At Adrian's words, Nathan nodded as Sasha patted him hard on the back. Who knew that Mr. Chaplin was so nice, and to think that he scared us at one point. Ignoring Sasha's strong reaction, Adrian could only smile into his mask. These people were quite nice to be around. Before Adrian could continue the conversation, he became aware of a huge problem around him. It's very quiet. What happened to the woman's song? Realizing the problem, Adrian quickly pulled out his revolver. This caused Sasha and Nathan to go on their guard. Sasha pulled out a sword from her back while Nathan pulled out his revolver, and they started looking around. This caused the people in front to be surprised and turn to look at them. What the fuck do you think you're doing? We are so close to arriving, why now do you react like this? Did a rat scare you? The fat man was strangely more aggressive with his group since they also took out their revolvers, but they were pointed at them. Mr. Chaplin, what made you react like that? Did a rat really scare him? Ignoring Sasha's words and her somewhat strong gaze, Adrian opened his mouth and said something that made everyone's blood run cold. Where is the woman who was alone? As soon as he said that, a shot rang out and hit the fat man's shoulder, causing him to drop his revolver. Adrian's group was 15 meters away from them. On my shoulder, damn bitch, you shoot me. Where are you? Do you have any idea whoiam? The fat man quickly held his shoulder to stop the bleeding without noticing the bloodthirsty gaze of the people around him. What the fuck are you doing? Find. What do you think you're doing? Before the fat man could give his order, he saw how the red bandit gang and his own bodyguards raised their revolvers and pointed at him. Why, you're not supposed to do this, and I'm paying you to protect me, so put down your. The fat man could never finish his words before a bullet hit him in the neck, followed by another in the stomach, and so on. A hail of bullets rained down on the bastard, and when they ran out of bullets, they pulled out their knives and proceeded to stab the fat man's body. When the hairs on the back of Adrian's neck rose, he reacted quickly and charged at Sasha and Nathan, knocking them out of the way just as 2 more shots rang out and hit where they stood. He quickly aimed his revolver at where the shots came from, which was in the shadow behind them, and fired 3 quick shots. The same woman from before rushed out of the shadows and managed to dodge the shots. This quick succession of events caused Sasha and Nathan to go into shock due to the speed with which everything happened, and they only reacted when Adrian pushed them. Nathan wasted no more time and drew his revolver, and Sasha drew her sword and stood guard against this unknown woman. But before the 3 of them could attack her, the sound of bodies hitting the ground rang out from behind them. Quickly glancing behind him, Adrian managed to see a black-haired man with an extremely cold gaze and a knife in hand who was standing over the bodies of the bodyguards and the red bandit gang. That icy, Inhuman gaze sent shivers down Adrian, Sasha, and Nathan's spines. But Adrian knew more than the two of them and held his revolver tighter in his right hand while he held his hunting knife in his left. Sequence 8 of Abyss, Path, Cold-Blooded. The murderer who terrorizes Backland was here. The situation they were in could not be worse. The escort work had been a complete failure, ending in the death of almost all who participated, the only survivors being Adrian, Sasha, and Nathan. And to top it off, now they had to fight against two enemy beyonders. The crazy woman had an extraordinary weapon and Adrian didn't know if the man had something up his sleeve. Quickly thinking of a plan, Adrian had an idea. The woman had to be the one who attended and bought the revolver at the Eye of Wisdom party. And that revolver should be a weapon made from instigator characteristics, and the woman could only be sequence 9, so her spirituality after using the revolver should not be much. So what they had to do was get rid of the woman and they could fight the man together. But obviously, the man wasn't going to let them kill her so easily. Adjusting his plan, Adrian quickly fired 2 shots at the man, which he dodged. But it gave Adrian time to shout an order to Sasha and Nathan. Don't let the bullets hit you and finish her quickly. Following the order, Sasha and Nathan quickly began attacking the woman. As Sasha approached with her sword in hand, Nathan aimed and fired with his revolver, keeping his distance. The woman cursed under her breath and jumped back, dodging the bullets and disappearing into the shadows again. While that was happening, Adrian was fighting the man. Before Adrian could aim his revolver at the man, he threw 3 knives lightly covered in green flames. Adrian quickly jumped to the side, barely dodging the knives, but the man didn't finish. He approached Adrian very quickly, giving a strong kick to his right hand, making the revolver fly and fall quite far from Adrian. Shit, the redhead didn't have time to say more as he had to use his knife to deflect the man's stab. As he did this, Adrian tried to deliver a strong jab to the man's chin, but the man dodged by moving his head to the side and then delivered a hard kick to Adrian's stomach away from him. This knocked the air out of Adrian, but he barely had time to recover because the man threw other knives covered in green flames. This time Adrian had to roll out of the way to avoid the knives. The man lunged at Adrian again, but the redhead quickly did a foot sweep, causing the man to stumble. The redhead quickly tried to stab the man, but he quickly used his hand for support and kicked Adrian in the face, sending him away from him again. The kick was enough to send the mask covering Adrian's face flying, revealing his face. Recovering quickly, Adrian stood up and prepared to continue fighting. This guy really knows how to fight, was what Adrian thought while blood fell from a cut over his eyebrow and his split lip and his stomach was sore from the kick. If I can't kill him by myself, I won't have any other option but to wait for Sasha and Nathan to finish their fight so they can help me, the redhead thought. As he prepared himself, Adrian quickly pulled his tripwire from his belt and began to wrap it around the handle of the knife. The situation on the side of Sasha and Nathan was not so good either. Nathan was using his intuition as a seer to be able to dodge the shots from the woman who kept hiding in the shadows, while Sasha used her reflexes as a warrior to dodge. Sasha had several cuts all over her body that had been made by a knife the woman was carrying. Even though she didn't use the instigation skill of the bullets, she could still use the hide by shadows skill because it didn't spend much spirituality. Sasha was getting more and more furious with this cowardly woman who only kept hiding in the shadows. This almost caused her to be unable to react when this same woman stepped out of a shadow behind her and nearly slashed her throat. If it weren't for Nathan being able to shoot the woman in the stomach, she would be dead. The woman ended up falling to the side and quickly re-entered the shadows while holding her stomach. Sasha, what's going on? Wake up! Nathan's somewhat shrill cry managed to get Sasha out of that trance of irritation. Sasha, biting her lip, quickly returned to her guard, preparing for what should be the last assault. The woman was bleeding out from the shot and she shouldn't have much spirituality left, so the next attack would be the last. Returning to Adrian, he was charging towards the man while holding the knife in his right hand and the tripwire in his left. The man also charged at Adrian as the last knife in his hand was engulfed in green flames. When they were face to face, Adrian delivered a strong jab with his left hand, but the man blocked it with his elbow, quickly trying to stab Adrian, but he managed to deflect him to the ground. The man then used his left arm to deliver a hard blow to Adrian's face. Adrian was unable to block it and received it squarely, stunning him. The man then thrust hard into Adrian's chest ready to end the fight. But Adrian slipped under the man's arm. The man tried to kick Adrian again but realized that his left arm along with his legs were wrapped in wire. Adrian would not miss this golden opportunity and quickly stabbed the man in the back of the head. The knife sank completely, getting stuck in the man's skull. After stabbing the knife, Adrian fell to the floor next to the body, gasping for air. In that short final confrontation, Adrian had not breathed even once. The man had just been promoted to Sequence 8, not giving him time to adapt to his new abilities, causing him to make many mistakes that Adrian tried to take advantage of but always ended up failing. Only at the very end, when he used the tripwire to completely restrict the man's movements, was Adrian able to land the final blow. After catching his breath, Adrian got up and yanked his knife from the man's head and grabbed his revolver but couldn't find his mask. Cursing under his breath, Adrian had no time to waste and headed off to help with Sasha and Nathan's fight. Hello guys, Author here. Man is truly hard, right? A fight Bedouin low sequence beyonders. I try to make it as hard as I could, so I hope it doesn't look too easy. I also try to show what a difference not having an extraordinary item makes in combat. If you have any advice, feel free to say it in the comments. Also, thanks to your continued support, this book will be recommended in new releases. Although I don't know if it's a good thing, it still makes me quite happy that you are liking this story. Also, here is a little spoiler. This volume 1 have planned to have 80 or 90 chapters depending on how I make it work. See you tomorrow guys. While Adrian had just finished his fight with the man, Sasha and Nathan were still having problems with the woman. The woman could be at a complete disadvantage, along with a hemorrhage that if left untreated would soon kill her. But thanks to the revolver, she was able to continue fighting while using the ability to hide in the shadows. She changed her focus. The warrior's defense was too strong, that's why the woman alternated her targets between Sasha and Nathan so they wouldn't know who she would go for now. With the injury affecting her movement, the woman was seriously considering escaping to report the success of the mission. While thinking about what to do, the woman hidden in the shadows managed to see a red-haired man running towards them with a revolver in one hand and a bloody knife in the other. Realizing that she had lost her partner, the woman saw no other option than to escape. If the redhead managed to kill his partner from Sequence 8 in the time they were apart, she would have no chance against him. Less now that it would be 3 against 1. Seeing the redhead arrive, Sasha quickly put her guard up while Nathan stared at him without lowering his guard. Taking a closer look, Nathan felt a sense of familiarity coming out of the redhead, so trusting the seer's senses, he returned his main attention to waiting for the woman's attack. Thank you for coming back for us, Mr. Chaplin. At Nathan's words, Sasha froze a little and stared at Adrian's bloody face for a few moments. I prefer him with the mask now, he's scarier than before. Keeping her thoughts to herself, Sasha turned her attention back to the battle and waited for the woman's attack. But after a few minutes without anything happening, she was baffled. Hey, why doesn't she attack? Did she bleed out? As they kept a formation with Sasha in the front, Nathan in the middle, and Adrian in the back, they looked around. Nathan quickly uses divination to find out if that woman escaped. Following the order, Nathan quickly released his pendulum from his left wrist, closed his eyes, and began to speak softly. The woman we fought escaped. The woman we fought escaped. After saying that in a low voice 7 times, Nathan opened his eyes and saw how the pendulum began to rotate clockwise at a very fast speed. Not settling for that, Nathan made one last divination. Closing his eyes again and repeating 7 times in a low voice. It's safe to chase her. It's safe to chase her. Opening his eyes again, Nathan saw how the pendulum was moving counterclockwise at a ridiculous speed. This meant that it was extremely dangerous to chase her. Interpreting this, Nathan wrapped the pendulum around his wrist again. She ran away and it's extremely dangerous to chase her. At Nathan's words, Sasha and Adrian put away their weapons and remained in awkward silence. Sasha and Nathan could see Adrian's face and Adrian looked at their masks. It was a pleasure to be your partner in this job. Bowing, Adrian turned and walked in the direction of the body of the man he killed. Wait, Mr. Chaplin. Nathan's voice stopped him and Adrian turned to look at the seer. He watched as he bowed before him. This surprised Adrian and Sasha a bit. But the warrior too followed her companion's lead and bowed before Adrian. Thank you very much for saving us before, Mr. Chaplain. I hope that one day we can be partners again, but on better terms. Yes, Mr. Chaplain, thank you very much for saving us and forgive me for doubting you before. I also hope we can work together again. They thanked Nathan and Sasha respectively at this. Adrian looked at them for a moment before giving a smile. Then I will wait for the day when our destinies cross again. Saying that, Adrian quickly left for the place where he left the body while Nathan and Sasha went in their respective directions. Dot dot dot. Dot dot dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot dot dot. Dot 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 dot. Adrian managed to reach the man's body and was just as he left it alone that this time there was a small knife on his forehead that was dark in color and had a slight green aura. Extraordinary characteristics. Looking at the small knife with cold air, Adrian took out his hunting knife and used it to separate the features from the body. Adrian quickly took advantage and began searching the body for anything useful but only managed to find a cigarette container and a stack of documents. Trying to read the documents, Adrian realized that all of them were encrypted. If he has this on him, it must be important. Putting the documents away, Adrian grabbed the cigarette container and with his hunting knife placed the characteristics inside it. After all this, Adrian thought about what to do with all this loot. Dot dot dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. On a lonely ship in the harbor, the wounded woman entered and went to the captain's room while holding her stomach. Despite her being tired and pale, she did not dare to enter the room. Instead, she knocked on the door and waited patiently. As she grew paler and her breathing became more labored, a deep voice sounded. Come in, my girl. Opening the door and calmly entering the dark room, the woman knelt down in front of a man sitting in a chair with his back to her. My lord, the mission was a success and the informer was killed. Where's your partner? Despite being interrupted, the woman did not care and she began to tremble strongly. And with a trembling voice she spoke. My lord's hound was defeated and I had no choice but to escape. Where are the documents? Being interrupted again, the woman trembled even more strongly. Hound had them. Tears began to fall from her eyes and the woman had to bite her lip to keep from sobbing. A heavy breath sounded through the room. Do you know who killed Hound? To this the woman replied. I don't know, my lord, but not only did you fail to get the documents, but you let the Hound get killed. Give me one reason not to kill you now. As he interrupted the woman, the man began to slowly get up from his chair. Please wait, I beg you, my lord. I may not know who the man who killed Hound is, but I do know his appearance. This calmed the man and he turned to look at the woman. Speak. When he said this, he turned to look at the woman and the only thing that could be seen of him was a dark red accessory that constantly emits a serene luster. Shaped like a full moon, it has crimson rubies embedded along its circumference. In the middle is a symbol that symbolized the moon, as well as many other mysterious labels hanging on his chest. Good afternoon, author here. I hope you'll excuse me for the time. I just got back from a little trip and I'm still tired. The next chapter will be out in a bit. Also, happy Sunday. Walking away from the scene after dumping the body in the Tussock River, Adrian thought about what to do with these features. While walking back home, Adrian passed a church of the Lord of the Storm. Looking at the container in his hands, Adrian then looked at the church windows. It would be so simple and I wouldn't have to deal with the problem of having this at home. Looking at the beautiful window of the church, Adrian really wanted to throw the container as if a stone went against the window. Taking his gaze away from the beautiful window, Adrian fastened his steps to quickly reach his house, containing the urge to repeat what he did in Bansi. Arriving at his house, Adrian, as always, checked that the traps were activated. Entering, he went to the corridor between his bedroom and the bathroom and broke a plank on the floor, leaving a good hole. Then he put the characteristics and the documents inside the hole and covered it again. He wouldn't put that where he cooked or where he slept. Adrian then went into the bathroom and took a bath, then went inside his room. Looking at his face, Adrian could only sigh and grab the medical kit. He started to treat his wounds and then when he got to the cut on his forehead, Adrian could only gasp. Grabbing the needle and thread, Adrian began to sew up her cut while growling. Looking in the mirror, Adrian could only sigh. Who knew that hunter skills could be used for this? Wrapping a bandage around the cut area, Adrian went to sleep. The next day, a Sunday, Adrian woke up and did the homework the detective had given him. It took him a while, but now the redhead managed to learn the complete alphabet of Hermes and was able to understand the 10 sentences that Isengard asked of him. It was 3 p.m. when he finished, and Adrian made himself a simple lunch before removing the container and documents from where he hid them. Looking at the two things in his hands, Adrian continued to have a pretty good idea of what to do. He didn't know if the correct choice would be to hand this over to Isengard and accumulate contribution points for future materials, or to have it released through the sale of the Storm Lord's Church. This made Adrian lament that he did not have any extraordinary elements of the seer's way. This would make his decision extremely easy, as he would only have to guess. The hunter did not have any extraordinary means until sequence 7, and even then it was more for combat than to help him in these cases. Shaking his head, Adrian did what occurred to him. Bracing himself, Adrian went outside and headed to Braveheart's bar. When the bartender saw it, he just sighed and pointed to the second floor. Adrian only apologized lightly to the bartender before going up to the second floor and standing in front of the door where the old man was. Only this time Adrian hadn't come to talk to him. I just hope his first reaction isn't to kill me. Sighing to calm his pounding heart, Adrian knocked on the door. Come in. When the door opened, the old man managed to see that it was the redhead, and he couldn't help but sigh. Adrian looked around the room, and as usual, he could see Marich playing cards with his zombies. Boy, what do you want now? I'm sorry, old man, but this time I'm not here to talk to you. This caused the old man to be surprised and saw how the redhead grabbed a chair and sat down in front of the table where Marich was. This one wants to kill himself, was all the old man thought when he saw what the redhead was doing. Good afternoon, sir. Tell me, would you be interested in making a deal with me? Marich ignored him and he kept playing cards as if he wasn't there. This didn't matter to Adrian, so he continued. Come on, sir, I promise you it will be quite an interesting one. I'm not interested, so go away. Marich finally spoke to him, but only to reject him. Adrian could only sigh loudly. This was exactly what he wanted to avoid, but the bow was going to leave with the document, it was too dangerous. So he decided to go all in. I promise you that it is a deal that suits both of us, Mr. Marich. At Adrian's words, Marich's pupils narrowed and he looked with barely contained malice at Adrian. He then began to slowly rise from his chair at the same time as his zombies, while Adrian didn't move a muscle. How do you know my name? He spoke with a deep and hoarse voice, approaching slowly. Don't worry about it, Mr. Marich. As I said, I just want to make a deal with you if you allow me to show you what I offer. When Adrian put his left hand into his jacket to take out the documents, Marich reacted and held his arm tightly, making Adrian grunt in pain. TTH, there's no need to be like that, Mr. Marich. I just want to make a deal. Between grunts, Adrian moved his right arm much slower since the left one was still held by Marich. When he took out the documents, he waved them in front of Marich, allowing him to see what they looked like. He quickly took them from his hand and let go of his left arm as he began to read through the papers, but his zombies were still standing looking at Adrian. It seems that he knows the method to decipher the documents. It was a good idea to come here. While thinking that, Adrian was rubbing his left arm, which was left extremely sore by the force with which Marich grabbed it. It would definitely leave a mark, and he would have to wear a shirt to hide it unless someone thinks he likes it rough. While Adrian waited for Marich to read all the documents, he failed to notice how a blonde lady was looking at him from the reflection of the window. After a long while, Marich finally finished reading all the documents and made all his zombies sit down and continue playing cards as if nothing had happened. Then he sat across from the redhead and stared at him. Where did you get this? I killed a cold blood, and he had the documents with him. What made you think it was a good idea to hand this over to me? Adrian didn't mind this interrogation because he could understand the delicate situation of Sharon and Marich. That's why he thought of the best answer to Marich's question. A hunch. At Adrian's words, Marich's eyebrow began to tremble strongly and he had to take a deep breath to calm down. Adrian was never in a million years going to tell Marich that it was because he knew he was from the Temperance faction, and that he would be in better hands if whatever those documents were with them. That would only make Marich seriously attack him. Adrian was only a small sequence 9, so how the hell could he know that Marich was from that faction? It was enough that he knew his name. Describe the man you killed to obtain these documents. He was a middle-aged man with straight black hair, cold eyes, and an inhuman aura. Trying to get more details from his memory, Adrian managed to remember the knife that the man used. And he used this knife. Pulling a knife out of his bag, he placed it on the table. It was a beautiful knife of medium length with a black handle with the symbol of the red moon carved on the blade. This was the knife that Adrian took from the body. Seeing the knife, Marich's pupils shrank slightly, but he quickly recovered, showing no other reaction. Seeing the knife, Marich thought for a while. He was always accompanied by a woman. What happened to her? She managed to escape. The question threw Adrian a little off balance, but it seemed like Marich knew the man he killed. What did you do with the body? I threw it in the Tussock River. Quote. 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 The redhead's words could only make Marich sigh again. Marich lowered his head slightly as if thinking about the lake, and Adrian would let him think he had time. After a few moments, Marich looked up again and looked at the redhead, who was playing with a card that he grabbed from the table. When Marich turned to see him, Adrian put the letter back on the table and fixed his posture. This information that you brought me is very valuable to me, so I am going to pay you £400 for it. That seems fine to me. The reward seemed fair enough to Adrian, as if it weren't for the fact that he couldn't decipher the documents, he would ask for a much higher payment, but restraining his greed, he accepted the money. Adrian never asked why Marich wasn't curious if he had the Beander characteristics of the man, but he decided to mind his business. Plus he could sell them to Isengar in his class tomorrow and accumulate points with the church. At this idea, Adrian's eyes shone slightly at the strange look of Marich and his zombies. Ignoring the strange attitude of the redhead, Marich snaps his fingers that made a zombie come towards him with a wad of bills in hand. Taking the money from the hands of the zombie Marich, he handed it over to Adrian, who happily began to count it in front of him. This caused Marich's eyebrow to tremble again, and he had to close his eyes to not look at the redhead. After counting that all the money was there, Adrian put the money inside his jacket. It's a pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Marich. Bowing in front of Marich, Adrian left the room, but not before patting the old man on the shoulder, who was watching all the interaction between them with his mouth open. After the redhead left, Marich gave the old man a look. He understood and left the room and went to chat with his workers. After that, the same blonde woman appeared at the window, only this time she came out as if she were a ghost and sat in a chair near Marich. Looking at Marich with those blue eyes, the woman spoke. What were those documents, Marich? Her voice was flat. They are all the places that the Rose School of Thought was searching for us, including those in charge of each search area. Marich was silent for a moment and then continued. Steve is in charge of the area we are currently in, while Jason and Tyre are in the middle of investigating their respective areas. The two of them should come to Backland in 5 months. At Marich's words, the woman remained silent and closed her eyes to think. Opening her blue eyes, she turned completely to look at Marich. My intuition tells me that we have to stay here and wait for them. But Sharon, if they manage to find us, we won't be able to fight them because of Scarlet Lunar Corona. I know, Marich, but my intuition tells me that if we leave this place and keep running, we won't be able to survive, so we have to stay here. At Sharon's words, Marich could only nod and return to the table to continue playing cards. While Sharon remained silent and still as if it were a doll. Adrian Kenway, was the thought of Sharon as she began to think about their next move. Adrian, as always, had just arrived at his house, and after checking the traps he sat down and took out all his money so he could count it. £220 plus £400 equals £620. This should be enough to buy the materials at Mr. A's party. Sighing joy, Adrian saved all his money and saved his homework, since tomorrow it was time to have classes with the detective. Sighing again, Adrian went to his room and slept, since tomorrow would be a busy day. The next day, Adrian woke up checking the time. It was 8 a.m., which allowed him to have a quiet breakfast. While drinking his coffee with white bread, the redhead was reading a familiar book. Stormwind Mountain Villa. Adrian blames Robert for making him buy the book, since he always saw him reading it while working. It was to such an extent that Adrian was betting that he had completely memorized the book. Leaving Robert's strange pastimes for later, the redhead simply finished his breakfast, saved the page he left off, and went to the detective's class. He managed to arrive at 9:50 a.m. and the servant from earlier opened the door for him and allowed him to enter. Waiting in the room they used to study, the redhead patted a pocket in his jacket confirming that he hadn't forgotten the container. Arriving at 10 a.m. Isengard entered calmly. "Good morning, my student. What happened to your face?" "I was in a fight on Saturday night." Ignoring Isengard, Adrian took out his homework and placed it on the table at the same time that he placed the container next to it. Looking at the container sealed with a wall of spirituality, Isengard narrowed his eyes and turned to see Adrian. "In one of my night jobs, I faced some wild beyonders and I had to kill one while the other escaped." This caused Isengard's surprise, and before he could ask what had happened, Adrian continued speaking. "When I returned to the body, it had released something strange, and not knowing what it was, I put it in the container and sealed it with a wall of spirituality. I thought you would know what to do with it." Understanding the situation, Isengard grabbed the container and, undoing the wall of spirituality, looked inside. Seeing the characteristics inside, Isengard resealed the container and turned to look at the redhead with a serious look. "Good job, Adrian. Give me a moment, I'll put this in a better place, and when I get back we'll continue." "It seems good to me, teacher. I'll be waiting for you here. While you can continue reading the Book of Hermes, it shouldn't take me long." Saying that, Isengard left the room and went up to the second floor. Ads by PubFuture. The redhead began to read the book while calmly waiting for Isengard to finish doing what he needed to do. After a while, Isengard came down from the second floor and sat in front of the redhead. "Tell me, my student, what did you do with the body?" At the question, Adrian couldn't help but blush again. "I threw it in the Tussock River." Isengard's look was stupefied. Had they become gangsters to throw bodies into the river? Was what Adrian could understand from Isengard's look. Looking at Isengard's still stunned look, Adrian told his reasoning to the detective. "I didn't have any other option, Professor. Really, the only thing I could get was that weird thing that dropped the body, and then I threw the body into the river. I couldn't risk the boss of those guys coming to get it back." "Don't worry, Adrian, I'm just a little surprised, that's all." Seeing how red his student was turning, Isengard decided to calm him down before he looked like a tomato. Hearing Isengard's words, the redhead finally calmed down a bit. "That's good to hear, teacher, and one other thing, won't I get a reward for bringing that thing?" This caused Isengard to look at him again as if another head had grown. "If you are going to receive it, my student, tell me what you would like." "Actually, teacher, I would like to convert the reward into contribution points to exchange in the future." At Adrian's words, Isengard couldn't help but sigh at his student's attitude. "That's possible, so if you don't have any more surprises up your sleeve, we can start with the class." "Yes, teacher." Ads by PubFuture. And so the classes continued until 3 p.m. After class ended, Adrian had nowhere else to go, so he decided to go to the club to hang out. Upon entering the club, the redhead managed to see Robert, who, as always, was reading. Already completely immune to this sight, he simply waved at him. "Good business, Mr. Robert, how's it going?" Hearing the voice, Robert turned to see and saw that it was Adrian. He smiled and put the book away. "Welcome, Mr. Adrian. Long time no see, how have you been?" "I've been doing well, attending a few classes and completing my work, you know." "I'm happy for you, Mr. Adrian. While you are here, let me inform you that Mr. Charles, Isaac, and Victor will attend the club again on Thursday, and they say they have good news, so a large part of the club will be there." Hearing Robert's words, the redhead couldn't help but cheer up a bit. It had been a while since he had seen such a strange group. "It's good to hear that, then I'll make sure to attend." "But Mr. Adrian, there is no one at this time in the club. Mr. Grievous is out and the other members usually come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it's just you and me here." "Yes, Mr. Adrian, that doesn't matter much. If you don't mind, I'd like to chat with you for a while." Not waiting for the redhead's response, Robert was surprised and blushed slightly. "So if you like, we can chat while we have some coffee." Saying that, Robert went to make the coffee while Adrian stayed waiting for him. So Adrian spent his afternoon chatting with Robert as time passed. When 7 p.m. arrived, Adrian said goodbye to Robert and headed home. Robert dismissed him and then sat back down and reopened his book to continue reading faithfully. When Adrian got home, he simply made dinner and went to bed. And so a Monday passed without much problem.